Alright guys, how's it going? Welcome back. Well, today I'm in this 2014 Audi A6 Allroad, which is basically an A6 Avant that's a bit more prepared for work. Or is it? Well, it certainly looks like it is. For a start, it has wider wheel arches, which I think are supposed to provide some protection, and it makes it look more rugged. Most importantly though, it's taller, which means you get more ground clearance, which is perfect if you live in a rural area. It means you can drive it up a rutted dirt track without the worry of ripping off your sump. It's a fairly simple idea in theory. You get enough off-roadery bits without the high running costs of a Range Rover. I recently filmed with an A4 Allroad, which I was generally impressed with. It felt like a workhorse. It felt like something you could rough up a little. And also on the used market at least, there's no big gulf in price between the A4 Avant and the A4 Allroad, so it seemed like a good idea to me. The big difference between the A4 Allroad and the A6 Allroad, apart from the size, is the fact that the A6 Allroad has adjustable air suspension, whereas the A4 does not. That means the A6 Allroad rides beautifully. You're literally floating on air. But be warned, because at some point the air suspension compressor which pumps up the air struts will fail, and you'll end up having to pawn off your grandmother's jewellery just to pay for a new one. I don't understand why they'd make a supposedly hardy work truck like this, and then fill it with so much tech that can and will go wrong. They should have kept it simple. They should have followed the KISS acronym. Keep it simple, stupid. The A4 followed that principle, but the A6 definitely does not. I have the same issue with the Discovery 4. It's a brilliant car, but it's too fussy and complex to be considered a great work truck. In my mind, a car can only be one thing or the other. Keep it simple and you've got a reliable, dependable vehicle, or make it luxurious and fill it full of gadgets, but you just know that one day you'll have to start replacing these items as and when they break. So just bear that in mind if you're thinking about buying an A6 Allroad. Don't buy one because you think it's a rough and ready, bulletproof workhorse, because it isn't really. On the bright side, it does have quite a lot going for it. Firstly, you've got its looks. It's a handsome car, this, especially in Glacier White with a black interior. It just looks clean and crisp, like a Glacier, I suppose. This has the optional full paint package, which means those chunky bumpers and wheel arch extensions are colour-coded to the body, rather than being left in black plastic like most. I think it looks good. It looks classy and expensive, but it isn't too showy. Nobody will hate you for driving one. I think that's the real reason Prince Charles has one. All in all, it just comes across as being more socially acceptable than a large SUV. And people will think that you're being kinder to the planet. Because it's basically a large estate car, predictably there's a lot of interior space. This would make one hell of a family car. Plus you get airbags everywhere, and it scored top marks on its Euro NCAP safety rating. Also, because it sits a little bit higher, it's just that much easier to get in and out of. There's lots of room up front, lots of headroom, lots of leg room, lots of elbow room. And because you sit that little bit higher up, visibility is great. Somebody's dropped a 10p piece down the side of this cup holder cover, so every time I go around the corner it rolls backward and forward. Very irritating. The seats are very wide and soft, so I think even if you're of a bigger build you'll find it very comfortable. It almost feels as though I'm sat in an A8. You get a nice comfortable adjustable armrest with storage underneath, you get two cup holders, you get some storage down here, you get some more storage in the door pockets, and a decent sized glove compartment. It's all very sensible, very Germanic, and not for a second did I expect any less. Everything in the interior is beautifully finished. You've got these nice knurled dials here for the climate. The controls for the infotainment system are all very easy to reach and easy to use. It's all very clever. The quality of the materials is also very good. The feel of the steering wheel, for example, feels very upmarket. Straight away I can tell you, it'd be a really easy car to live with. Nothing's a chore. Moving to the rear seats, there's lots of space back there too. Enough space, in fact, for 3 adults, without any one of them complaining. And the boot is more than ample at 565 litres. And the rear seats fold flat too. If you can't fit what you're trying to move into the back of an A6 Allroad, you've got to ask yourself, is it really worth the trouble? Engine-wise, the A4 that I tested had a 2-litre turbo diesel engine, which I thought was adequate. It did a fine job. I'm happy to report that this A6 does engines a bit better than the A4. All of them are a 3-litre. There are 4 on offer. There's a 3-litre petrol with 300 horsepower, or there are 3 diesels. The runt of the litre produces 201 horsepower. This one I'm in today is the middle of the road with 245. Or at the top of the tree is a 310 horsepower bi-turbo diesel, which I imagine will go like a ballistic missile. I say that because this middle of the road 245 brake horsepower model is very quick. 0 to 60 in around 6.5 seconds quick, and it keeps going till it hits 147 miles an hour. You really don't need any more than this. Also, because it's a V6, it sounds good. Watch this. That genuinely pins you into your seat. And then before you know it, you are getting 3 points and a letter through the post. I use this phrase over and over again, but it's a great all-rounder, this. In fact, that's what Audi probably should have called it, the A6 Allrounder. As I've mentioned many times before, I'm just not a fan of diesels. I won't bore you with the details again. But for a workhorse, they do still make sense. This is a car that feels quick, a car that will nudge 150 miles an hour, and yet it'll turn 34 miles per gallon around town, and 50 on a motorway run. That means a full tank of diesel will get you 1,000 miles on the motorway before it asks for a drop more. You really can't beat that. Whereas with the petrol, you'll be doing 24 miles per gallon around town, and maybe if you drive it carefully, you'll get 40 on a motorway run. It just doesn't really compare. Another good thing is that the road tax here in the UK on this particular car is only £220 a year, which is much easier to stomach than the $650 you'd have to pay for a Disco 4. The steering's very light and provides no feedback whatsoever, but on a car like this, it doesn't really matter. As I mentioned at the start, the ride quality on this is superb. Not only are you riding on air, but this particular model only has 18-inch wheels, which means you get a decent amount of sidewall. You can opt for bigger wheels, which granted do look much better, but that is at the sacrifice of the ride quality. This model ran from 2012 to 2018, which again is another good thing because it doesn't yet look dated. If you were to put a private plate on this car, it just wouldn't look old. Having spent some time with this now, I would genuinely have one. It does a lot of things very well. It'll also make you realise that you probably don't need a large, cumbersome, thirsty SUV, because this will do everything you ask of it without breaking a sweat. Used prices here in the UK start at around £9,000, but that's going to get you an early example with about 150,000, 160,000 miles on the clock. You'll have to spend between £12,000 and £13,000 to find one that hasn't broken 100. Now you need to make sure that it's had regular oil changes. These engines have a timing chain rather than a timing belt, and if you haven't changed the oil regularly, it can start to rattle, and then it will need replacing. And the position of the chain on these engines is at the back near the bulkhead, which means to change the chain, you've got to take the engine out, and you can be facing a bill of £2,000 or £3,000. So make sure it's had frequent oil changes. Also make sure it's had something called a Haldex service. These cars use Audi's venerable Quattro four-wheel drive system, but they do need servicing. Otherwise, once again, you can be staring down the barrel of a very big bill. Another thing while we're on this subject, the automatic gearbox you get does a very good job. It's quick and seamless, but it does need regular servicing. You need to service them every 40,000 miles, but hardly anybody does. So when you buy one with 120,000 miles on the clock, you'll be facing a repair bill of £2,000 for the auto box. Here comes the rain. So then, every 40,000 miles, make sure that you service the gearbox. Take it to an automatic gearbox centre, it'll cost you between £200 and £300, but you just have peace of mind then for another 40k. If you're looking at buying a used one, then make sure it's had regular box services. I couldn't believe it when I saw the history on this. This one's done 95,000 miles, and it's been serviced to within an inch of its life. It's almost as if I've owned it. The box was serviced at 40 and 80. Nobody does that. Now, servicing costs in general aren't that expensive, and somewhat controversially, I would actually recommend you go and use an Audi main dealer. I've never had any issues with mine, and the costs are quite reasonable. And most importantly, they do things like software updates, which your trusty mechanic under the railway arches won't be able to. So I'd say just bite the bullet and stick with your local Audi dealer. Something else to mention, if you go for a diesel, make sure you run it on premium diesel at least every other fill-up. Take it for a long, steady run at least a couple of times a month. You shouldn't have any DPF issues. And I suppose the only other thing to mention is the air suspension compressor itself. Now, if that fails, that'll set you back around £1,000 for a new one. I suppose if you shop around, you might be able to get it done cheaper than that, but at least you've got a ballpark figure. Well, I think that's about it. The A4 Allroad is more basic, so there's less to go wrong, but it is also less car. This is much more luxurious and more refined, and personally I would take the risk and buy the A6 over the A4, but some people won't like to take the risk, in which case, buy the A4. Does that make sense? I'm not sure if it does, to be honest, but personally I'd rather have the more luxurious car and take the risk, but each to their own. So thank you once again for watching. Make sure you give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't done already. You can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I'll leave the link below. If you've got any comments or questions, then let me know below and I'll do my best to get back to you. If you're interested in getting into the used car business, then check out my online course. I've created an online platform with nearly 100 videos which explain every single aspect of the used motor trade. How to start, funding, branding, sourcing cars, preparing cars for sale, it's all there, so do check it out. And also, because of the good response I've had, I've kept up the offer, so it's free for the first 30 days, nothing at all. Then after that, it's only £27 a month, and you can cancel at any time, so check it out. Right, well, cheers guys, I'll see you next time.